My first question, I suppose, to any of you who'd like to answer it, it's a question that asks, what skills, talents and personal qualities do you think young people might need to have or to develop a career in our sector? Skills, talents and personal qualities. Who'd like to answer first? Or I'll pick a volunteer. John, you're my volunteer.
Well, interesting, in my opinion, talent obviously is very, very important and will open a lot of doors for you. But I would put that further down the chain. I think personal qualities are much more important. And, the people that we work with somebody could be an incredibly talented illustrator, but if their attitude isn't right, if they're not able to work under stress and work to timings, and if they're not reliable, then ultimately it's not going to work out. So having a work ethic, being professional, being hardworking, all of those things I would put above talent in terms of
That's a really good question, because I think sometimes if we hadn't spoken to you, we'd imagine you must be an illustrator to start the organisation, and you're not. So that's really interesting. What about other comments from the panellists about other qualities you think we might need if you're going to work in our sector, in this sector? Miranda.
Sort of being good at communicating and being able to sort of be flexible in working with people is really, really important. And that doesn't mean that you have to be extrovert, but it's about sort of working out where you fit and how how your talents can kind of best be brought to bear. But yeah, just being able to communicate well with people within a team and also beyond is really crucial.
I've got a question actually for you, Kate. Many young people think they want to be famous and a celebrity, and the performing arts seems like a great route. What are your thoughts on that, on celebrity and performing arts?
I think that's kind of that. I think there are, as I said before, it's a big art form, and of course, dance is part of what when we see on television and films, it is a big part of celebrity. I think it's similar to your iceberg analogy. That for me, I think that actually the celebrity aspects of performing arts is above the water, but actually there's a huge amount of other work that happens away from that the famous arena.
That's a good answer. We've got another question coming in, actually. Jen, have you got a question for our panel?
Yeah, actually, it's another question for Kate, and I think this might be from a performing arts teacher in the Peterborough area. She says, what advice would you give to an enthusiastic 16-year-old dance student?
Ooh. That's a great question. I think I would encourage them to practice a lot, and by practice I don't mean repeat. What I mean absorb themselves in practice, make work, try things, be experimental, be innovative. Don't worry too much about recreating work that already exists. Have faith in your own artistic ideas. I think it's also really one of the things that I've loved in my career is that how dance can happen everywhere, that it doesn't have to be located in a dance studio. And I think that's something really exciting that's happened in recent years. And go and see work, which I think is really important. I think it's important because it inspires. I also think it's important on a practical sense because actually when you do progress maybe into FE or into higher education or even conservatoire training or even auditions, you almost always will be asked, what do you like? What was the last thing you saw and why did you like it? So it's really important to go and see work.
Good answer. We have more questions. Jen, is that right?
Yeah, we've got lots of questions coming in now. Tom in Cambridge says, is it true that it doesn't matter what degree course I take at university to get a job in a creative industry?
Well, good question. Who'd like to answer that one? Go for it. Go for it.
It depends. I mean, that's the thing. I mean, this is the thing about degrees. A degree is a great place to funnel all your energies and take you down a path and get you to meet kind of a range of different kind of people. But it's also a place where you can pivot from as well. I think a degree gives you can give you a lot of those answering your own questions kind of skills, like reflective skills. And those reflective skills can help you later on in any kind of career, really, in terms of that kind of stuff. It's a good place, but it is quite a lot of money nowadays.
It is a lot
to
of
kind
money,
of
it is,
to
isn't
get
it?
to
Yeah.
get yourself down there.
Yeah, I think, in the museum sector, we're really trying to think about kind of how we make sure people coming from all different tracks can end up with jobs in the sector and contribute. So that increasingly there are kind of apprenticeship
Yes.
routes in, and again, sort of lots of the different professional functions in a museum. But also, of course, degrees are part of the mix. And, just to answer from, within my team at the museum, we tend to say, a degree from any that's connected with the collections across the museums, which actually, when it comes down to it, there's 8 different university museums in Cambridge. You'd almost be hard pushed to find a degree that you couldn't claim a connection to one of those collections. But that's how we frame it for those roles in my team where we are looking for a degree.
Okay, that's good. Any more questions, Jen? Is there any more coming?
Yeah, we have a question specifically from Witchford Village College. I think this is probably to all of you. How do you and your employees find inspiration for all of your projects? Possibly that's aimed at John the most.
Yeah, let's start with John.
Okay. Well, I mean, the interesting thing about the world that we work in is that we're often quite late to the party when it comes to the concept and the idea. That the world of advertising is obviously one where there's lots of money involved, and there's all sorts of conversations that happen really before we come in. So, for example, if there's a new product being launched, there'll be a huge amount of research. There will be, naming and branding conversations, and lots of detail and work will go into it. And then right at the 11th hour, the advertising agency will think, well, actually, we need an ad campaign here to go with this. So we come in quite late into that picture. So it's not always that we're the ones coming up with the concepts and the ideas. That's more the advertising world. What we're doing is taking their concepts and visually executing them.
Good question. Good answer. Thank you. Any other questions there from the audience, Jen?
Yep. This is a great question. Have any of you met any famous people? That's from Sarah in Peterborough.
Usually ask. I'll ask all of you in turn. So, have you met any famous people?
I've met people who I would consider to be famous in my world. I suppose I performed in the Paralympic closing ceremony.
Wow.
So I didn't meet, but I danced
That's
very
impressive.
close to Coldplay.
That's
I could
very
wave
impressive.
at them.
Have you met...
I pretty have met every single Minecraft YouTuber that there is
there
on
we
the
go.
planet.
There we go.
Yeah, from everywhere. From there's these Minecraft conventions, and you get to meet and greet and go backstage in the green room and chat about stuff. So and then there's other famous people who's got children who love Minecraft people, and so I get to meet really famous for his super set. But it's an interesting mix because everybody thinks everybody else is famous in a room, and we're all going, oh my gosh, look at that person, and they go, oh my gosh, it's Stampy. And it's like so that's so loads of people. Yeah.
Miranda?
Yeah, I mean, I guess the famous people I'm most excited to meet are some of the artists who I really look up to, who I get to meet through my work, and some of them are more household names than others. So like Grace and Perry, for example, people might have come across. And then I've met, sometimes members of the royal family come and visit local museums, and and because I guess museums are seen as kind of community hubs, so that has happened to me as well.
And last but not least?
I'm a Liverpool fan, and I got to meet Mohamed Salah through work, so that was pretty special for me. Personally, I was like a little kid again, asking Mo to sign things.
I've got a question to ask to all of you, and as a parent myself, and many of your parents I know, what would you say if parents tell you to get a proper job, not something in the arts or creative industries? Kate, what do you say to your offspring?
Well, I think, I mean, for me, personally, that's very interesting because I didn't grow up in an artistic family.
Okay.
So I wasn't taken to go and see dance. We watched a lot of telly, and that was my upbringing. So actually, when I got into dance, it was very alien to my parents. And when I wanted to go away and study dance, and it was much cheaper when I did that, but even then there was the consideration of the debt. My parents actually persuaded me to enrol on an English and related arts degree, just for safety, just in case. And actually, and I think this is perhaps and I'm sure there's similar flexibility now. I changed my degree in the first week of university. I just realised immediately, as soon as I was around dancers, it's paid off. But so I would, I'd love my kids to study dance, but they won't.
Get a creative job.
Yeah.
Adam, what about you?
My mum still thinks I don't have a proper job, and to a certain extent, she's absolutely right. I don't quite know what a proper job. I don't think I could fit into a proper job now. Whatever a proper job is, I don't know what they really exist. I think for me, I've had such a long career of doing all sorts of really weird nonsense, but always a little bit creative at the end of the day. I find myself at this position playing Minecraft, for goodness sake, as a sort of, which is an odd thing. So it's definitely not proper. The fact that, and there are other people within the particular Minecraft community who are young people who found themselves in these kind of careers as well, who've suddenly had to develop business skills and all these kind of other bits and pieces, and develop themselves as human beings and as adults. Because literally these are young people who've literally found themselves in this kind of career. That's been really interesting.
I know we've got more questions from Jen. Other questions for the panel?
Yeah, Sam in Wisbeach says, can I expect to not be paid very much if I work in the arts or creative industry?
Who'd like to take that one? Would you like to take that one, John?
Well, maybe it's the agent. I should, because I
think maybe you should. Yes, go with it. Go with it.
Negotiate. There's a huge gap, I would say. I'd say there are the world that I know is illustration. There are illustrators who. It's fair to say probably don't earn a huge amount of money and perhaps struggle at times. At the other end of that spectrum, I know and work with people who earn a very, very good living from doing what they love. So no, I think it's wrong to presume that it's, I think there's a big spectrum there in terms of income, and I think it's wrong to presume that it's kind of a lifestyle that's not going to pay very well.
I also think I think there's a definite transition where you perhaps take jobs when you're younger that I can remember doing half-an-hour workshops in village halls for 10 quid, and then you get to a point where you stop doing that. And my response to the money question is always, and I feel really strongly about this, that I do all right. I'm fine. But actually, more importantly for me, I never dread going to work. I'd feel lucky all the time. That's
really important.
And I think that for me is more important than having lots of money.
Yeah, and I think money is a sort of big issue. Money's about, and this is about the London-centric thing. Living in London is extremely expensive.
Absolutely.
With new technology nowadays, and what the internet can do and things like that, there are more places around the world that you can live and work and still have an international impact in terms of your work getting out there. And that means you might be able to live in a cheaper place. I certainly do. I live in a lovely cheap place.
So whereabouts do you live?
So I live in Cumbria.
Which is miles away from here.
North of England, yeah. In a little, literally Cumbria, there's more sheep than people. It is extreme.
East Anglia's quite good. We have
I know. I'm competing well.
Fields, yes.
But it is such a massive county. We get away with it. But it is, so it's amazing. But because we've got a cracking little internet connection there, it does mean that I can work. I worked for 2 years with people in Los Angeles just on Skype and doing performances and things like that, and voiceovers and things like that as well. So that, and I could do that in my room, in the bedroom, in the spare room,
Which, of course, to the younger generation is not so strange. I think to my generation, that was an unusual thing to say. Jen, I think we've got more questions from you, but we're running out of time slightly.
Yep, we have a question from Zara in Norfolk who says, is it best to go to an art school or a more traditional university for my degree?
Good question. Good question. Who'd like to answer that one first?
I can do a really quick answer.
Quick answer, good.
I think maybe 10 years ago there was a real hierarchy between conservatoire dance training or arts training and traditional university routes, and I've noticed in my career that's really shifted, that actually the offer from universities is really that hierarchy seems to be much more levelled out. So I think I would encourage people to kind of just really look into which of those routes is best for them individually.
Very good. John, I'm going to ask you next. Sort of jumping around as I do something.
Well, I mean, the funny thing is about the way that we find talent and that we find new illustrators is actually we're not really interested in where they went to university. And I'm not saying that that's not important. It's just not really a factor for us. By the time we meet them and they've gone through education and they're out there creating work, we're interested in the work, and we're interested in the person behind the work and their attitude and their professionalism. Obviously, lots has gone on before that in terms of their education to get them to that point, but I'm really not particularly interested into where somebody went to university.
I think there's some really interesting. Thank you for those answers. Another question, Jen? We've just got time, I think.
Yeah, Sophie in Peterborough says, can I make a career from being a visual artist?
Ooh. Who'd like to have a bat with that one? I think probably either, one of you. Miranda, do you want to say that one for us?
I mean, I think many people do, so yes, why not? If that's
if that is
if that is your passion. And I work with lots of freelance visual artists, and some of them a little bit, as you were saying at the start of their career, maybe they're spending a greater balance of their time kind of leading arts education workshops, and some of them will always do that and that's their passion, and others will get more and bigger commissions and projects. But yeah, people do, and if that's your passion, you should find opportunities to meet and talk to artists, to look at the different routes out there. But it's absolutely possible.
Yeah, no, I would agree, and I think there's a lot more crossover in industry now. I think it's there's a lot of companies that are very interested in collaborating with artists, and you see people from a fine art background or from different areas of creativity working with brands, because brands want interesting content. And they want, in an increasingly digital world, sometimes they want a bit of craft and they want to see something physical as well. So absolutely, there's many ways to earn a living from being a visual artist.
And also visual artists, I think, are problem solvers naturally. So they can fit into all sorts of different roles, especially if you want someone who can solve problems quickly and with groups of people as well. I mean, those kind of problem solving skills with any kind of visual arts and performing arts is amazing. And you're incredibly, when you meet people and we all get around a table and that's musicians or kind of other people, it's that collaborative problem solving, kind of finding stuff out, whether it's what you're going to have for dinner that night. It's always
really good comments. Thank you to the panel. We're running out of time, which is always the case when you're enjoying yourself. Lots of people we need to thank for today's broadcast. First of all, our excellent guests. So thank you indeed, Kate, Adam, Miranda and John, for finding time to come and talk to us. Really much appreciated. Thank you. Festival Bridge and partners for developing and funding Creating the Future. To Jen, who handled the questions from schools today, and Cambridge Culture for supporting CTF Live. University Centre Peterborough and PRC for this use of this TV studio here in Peterborough, and for their continued support. Need to thank especially to Mark from Peterborough Films, who's been a supporter of this project from the beginning, and Wave FX, who've also, for their technical skill and expertise to make it happen. Alia Business Centre, Future Business have been helpful, but probably the most important people to thank are you who've watched this, either live or will watch it in the future. It's really important that you look and see and think about future careers, portfolio careers, jobs in creative industries, some of which don't even exist yet. But I think being creative is going to be the way forward, because creativity is things that you can't really mechanise. So all being well, if you stick to your creative guns and ask your staff at school for more information, then I think you could have a really enjoyable, exciting and long-term career, freelance or otherwise, in the creative industries. Thank you for watching.